Hey everyone, this is Pause or Repeat. Here we figure out whether a game is really worth your time and money. Today's game is The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. This is a Legend of Zelda game developed by the same team that did the remake of Link's Awakening, and this can easily be seen in the art style of the game with a top-down 3D, 2D cartoon aesthetic. However, it being a different team than the main Zelda team raises a question on whether it will still feel like a Zelda game. So let's analyze the gameplay and see how they did. The gameplay of Echoes of Wisdom is a bit different from your typical Legend of Zelda game. For starters, you're playing as Zelda, not Link for once. The gameplay loop centers around one specific and versatile mechanic, the ability to use echoes. You can summon everyday objects or even monsters as echoes once you learn them. For everyday objects, this simply means walking up to them, and for monsters, this means beating them at least once. The mechanic is used widely for the combat system, but its greatest strength lies in its use for solving puzzles. You'll find yourself building bed bridges, using trampolines, or even attaching yourself to a spider in order to scale walls. So be creative. For the combat, you'll mostly summon monsters to fight for you while you watch from the sidelines. There is an ability to use the classic Zelda game combat like a sword and bow, it's just on a timer. However, the game does give you recharges for that combat mode pretty regularly, so you can fight alongside your monsters. Proper dungeons are also present as seen in other top-down Zelda games, a welcome addition. But how does this all fit into the story? The story of Echoes of Wisdom is a bit of a twist on your typical Zelda game. You first control Link at the end of his adventure. However, right after seemingly defeating Ganon, he gets sucked into a rift. Before fully falling in, however, he shoots an arrow to release Zelda from her crystal prison. She then embarks on her own journey with the help of a fairy named Tri to mend the rifts around Hyrule and save Link as well as the kingdom. But now the question still stands. Pause or repeat? Shouldn't this be called The Legend of Link, since we're playing as Zelda this time and not Link? Because, the roles are reversed here. What do you think, Chris?
That's a good point, and I think, Nintendo's done a really good job with, especially in the year 2024, empowering some of their iconic female characters, like we saw with Princess Peach, with her game earlier this year. But yeah, people would definitely say that, but you know what? They don't want to get sued. What if someone already copyrighted that, Henrik? Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why they got to stick with it. But yeah,
we're talking about Nintendo suing people. I think that they're willing to sue people if it means they get money.
Well, beyond their devious schemes, behind the scenes, I gotta say, Henrik, this is a charming twist in the Princess Zelda saga. I mean, suddenly she's the star of the show, tasked with saving Hyrule after our beloved swordsman, Link, gets yanked into a mysterious rift like my socks in a washing machine. I don't know about you, Henrik, but they always seem to go missing when I need them the most.
Sometimes. It's weird. It's like, where'd it go?
Yeah, what's up with all that? And then all of a sudden, you got all these strange rifts that are popping up everywhere, munching on anyone who gets too close, and goodbye to the king and his trusty advisors, who probably thought to themselves, Henrik, like they were probably just taking a stroll. I mean, who knew that saving the kingdom would come with so much unwanted real estate development, right? I mean, everything's getting taken, even buildings, for crying out loud.
Yeah. No, yeah, so, that is the whole thing, is the game, it's meant to give you just a landscape for you to be creative with. And you actually do have to be pretty creative for some of these puzzles. I wouldn't say the puzzles are like super hard, but Legend of Zelda puzzles have never really been really that hard when it comes down to it. Maybe frustrating for some things, like, the infamous water temple from Ocarina of Time.
Right.
But they're never really like so hard that you're like, I have to step away from this for like a week and then I can come back to it and understand what I'm doing. It's not like that.
Well, take the cue from the art direction, Henrik, right? I mean, it's very child-friendly. I mean, it's really kind of geared towards everyone, and I think that's definitely was its premise compared, to the past, title that they were just exploring. I think they wanted to kind of tone it down a little bit, kind of keep it, rated E for everyone. But I gotta say, I mean, you're absolutely right. I absolutely love the smorgasbord of enemies Princess Zelda faces on her adventures. I mean, plus she's got her floating buddy that you highlighted perfectly in your video, Tri, which, can create echoes out of any enemy you defeat and then can conjure up all sorts of random objects. I mean, I found myself thinking like, wow, Echo is basically Nintendo's way of go ahead, break our game. We dare you. I mean, it
felt
very similar, right? I mean, didn't that kind of remind you of like Breath of the Wild with all that creative chaos, and then they turned it up 11 with Tears of the Kingdom, and then they found a way to make it happen with this like 2.5D Zelda game? I thought it was
I actually
very, very
feel
creative.
Like they took a lot of things they learned from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and said, what can we translate from the 3D games to 2D? And you know, so you have things that really almost feel like the Ultra Hand ability from Tears of the Kingdom, and the whole being able to build you know, machines in Tears of the Kingdom. Like they take stuff like that and they put that into this game. And I think it's really awesome that they did a great job of translating it into the 2D environment, and it doesn't feel out of place or anything like that. It feels like it slots right in, and there's not a whole lot I can really complain about when it comes to the puzzles and the creativity that you can, you know, decide to be with a puzzle. You can do it one way or you can do it another way. There's several different ways to approach different puzzles.
Well, I mean, especially when you're flipping the classic formula on its head, I think that was a really smart stylistic move. And I mean, you're talking about the puzzle rooms and Echoes of Wisdom. I mean, you're absolutely right. They got treasure troves of options that lead you onto a lot of aha moments. I mean, didn't you get that kind of same vibe playing this game, like those childhood memories we all had? I mean, I was having like rogue waves hitting me over and over and over again. Like you're talking about, sometimes you're going to go into a cave and you're going to see this like seemingly impossible chest, only to realize that maybe you had the tools all along to be able to open up that chest, whether it is those echoes that you collected along the way, whether it's a monster having to hit a button, or maybe stacking objects as if though you are a mad scientist, you know, without the lab coat or the degree, or maybe you're like a toddler that's just like stacking up his building blocks. I mean, it's really, really funny how this game like really adapts to all the, because you wouldn't think that you can mash all that together in, again, a 2.5D universe, while also not trying to mimic Link, but also do something different that really makes Zelda the centric character.
Yeah, and I think if there's only one thing that I can really give it a downgrade on the point system, if there even is one to give for this, is really the combat. I feel like while it is creative to be able to summon an enemy that you've defeated to defeat other enemies for you, I feel like you end up getting disconnected from the combat a little bit. And yeah, there is that swordsman mode that you can go into, but you're not going to be in that all the time because you can't. You can't be in it all the time. And so, I don't know, I feel like it reminds me, surprisingly enough, of how I felt about the combat in a game like Devil May Cry 5, where you play as these two guys, Nero or Dante, and they're really just in there, you know, slashing everything, you know, doing their thing. And then you play as V, and you're just like sitting in the back, you know, while your minions are doing everything. It's not as exciting.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a
point, you know.
It's a tad bit slow pace. I kind of you know, I think I saw it online where some people were joking that this game kind of reminds them of like a children's version of Diablo 4 with how slow the attack mechanics kind of be, and they're like, we're just kind of slowly gearing you up to the mature route that you will sooner or later explore in your lifetime. And it's so funny that you were referencing the whole idea about, you know, Princess Zelda, you know, wielding, you know, Link's sword, because I was literally going to ask you that, because I was thinking about those energy bars. It kind of reminds you about like how fast they drain out. I think this is the analogy that I was kind of thinking about it. It's basically your energy bar drains faster than your parents losing patience over your nonsense when you keep asking them for more candy at the market the day after Halloween. That's basically how it works, okay? So you don't have enough echoes already? That's basically what the game's trying to tell you, Henrik. We do not want you using Link's sword. And I think that's kind of the cool moment, especially when you get into some of those boss battles, because yeah, you're definitely going to need the sword. But then also at the same time, they want you to be able to utilize the arsenal of echoes that you have within your weapon belt. So I think it's really, really cool. And, you know, just on a weird level too, what really surprised me about this game was the fact that they added the automation system. Were you thrown off by this? I mean, they got you building robots now in Zelda. I felt a little out of place. I mean, yeah, I get that they were creating that more creative element in the last game, Tears of the Kingdom, but like,
yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, you were able to do that in Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, maybe not, by default were they expecting people to build like full-on mechs and robots, but
yeah, right.
I've seen people do that in Tears of the Kingdom, and it works.
But it just kind of threw me off, though, because I get it. They're a bit stationary. I mean, you got to manually wind them up before they start working. So they're not quite like those Tesla robots we've all been seeing circulating over the web over the last week. They're more like those robot butlers that need more maintenance than your old lawnmower. So they're not as reliable as they are in Zelda, but it just kind of felt a tad out of place, I gotta say. And then lastly, I just gotta mention this. I was, art style. What did you think about this, Henrik? Because when I kept thinking about the art style, I kept pondering to myself, would it have worked better if it wasn't so much that cartoonish route? I mean, would it have been better if they went with a modern approach? I mean, how did you feel about that? I mean, do you think does that take away from that old school element that maybe they were trying to gear, like half of it GameCube and half of it maybe Game Boy Advance?
No, I don't think it takes it away from the experience at all, really. I think actually the art style will keep it feeling fresh even 10 years from now, as opposed to if they went with a more realistic approach to things and not like the cel-shaded cartoony aesthetic. Because even, yeah, you can look back at the games that have done the more realistic, darker tone, like Twilight Princess, for example. Like, you can go back to that and it still looks pretty good, but it doesn't hold up as well comparing to the art style of like Wind Waker, which is more like what this game has tried to do. That more of cel-shaded cartoon, like definitely not trying to look like reality approach. It's a stylistic choice for a reason, and it's to make it look timeless. Really, when you look at it 10 years from now, it's going to look the same that it did now.
Yeah, now that I'm listening to you, Henrik, I think you're right. I don't know if I want that realistic approach. I mean, if we're having robots in this game, we might be seeing Link sporting a man bun and then maybe sipping on a pumpkin spice latte. So I think you've convinced me. Let's keep with the cartoonish route. But I think it's time. The verdict has got to be in place. And you know what? I think it's a repeat. I think it's a lot of fun. I think a lot of people that are really in gear with the Legend of Zelda franchise is going to have a blast with this game, and you're going to want to revisit it 5 years from now, because you're going to have maybe your loved one that wants to pick it up, and then you might be like, oh my gosh, I haven't played this game enough, or we don't get to explore the saga of Princess Zelda enough. And so I think, I definitely think it's going to live the test of time, and it's going to open up even more doors to explore her story even further. What do you say, Henrik?
Yeah, it's a repeat for me as well. I, too, believe that a lot of people will have a great time in this new legendary experience from the Legend of Zelda series and moving forward into the, several years from now. And I'm also very glad to see that Nintendo hasn't stopped trying to at least release some sort of 2D Zelda game, because there's always that thought in the back of my head, hey, are they ever going to go back to that? Now that they've got such a focus on the 3D space with, the last two games that they did in that being such big hits.
Yeah.
They might not have as much incentive to go back to the 2D style, but they did here, and I'm glad they did, because it's a great game.
Well, they definitely got their incentive on their iconic Nintendo female characters. Like, again, we've had Princess Peach, we've had, Princess Zelda, and I gotta say, Henrik, now all eyes are going to be on Samus.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Next Metroid game, yeah.
Don't screw it up.
We do have Metroid Prime coming. That has been announced already, Metroid Prime 4.
Okay, fair enough. That is so freaking true.